Hi there and welcome to another Richard Head Longbows how-to video. I recently asked my fellow YouTubers in a video what aspect of bow making and arrow making that you wanted us to shoot. Now quite a few of you requested tillering. Now tillering is one of those videos I've thought about doing, but quite frankly it's difficult to do. Not only is it the thing within bow making that takes the longest time to learn, it's the art form of bow making. It's the thing that you can't really teach in a video. That is to say, doing a short 10-15 minute video on YouTube really isn't going to do it justice. It may be helpful in giving you pointers, but it isn't really going to tell you how to do it, because quite frankly I can't. It's like teaching someone to paint. You can teach them how to mix colours, how to hold the brush properly, but it's years of experience and sticking with it and your own artistic eye that really gets you to the point where you're saying, okay, yes, the tillering is something I can now do, it's something that I'm confident to do. And it is about confidence, it is about that artistic eye. That's another one of those reasons why I've held off from doing this video, because everybody's opinion on what makes a bow tillered is very different. Quite frankly, I know that people are going to be watching this going, "Whoa, that's not right." Well, there you go. Therein lies the problem. Will you ever be satisfied with the bow that you've tillered? Probably not. Is there a point at which you can get to when making the bow that you can go, okay, right, it's ready now, it's saleable, I'm happy to use it? Well then yes, there is a point where you have to stop and say it's done. Because there is the temptation there to keep going, to keep fiddling, until you end up with a perfectly tillered matchstick. One of the other reasons why I've held off from making a video on tillering is, quite frankly, making a video on tillering. It's just really difficult. Trying to get the bow in focus, trying to get the full length of it in focus, trying to be able to actually show what I'm seeing, it's nigh on impossible. Like I was just explaining, because it takes so long to learn, you can show someone a problem and they might not be able to see it yet. You can say to somebody, well, there's a stiff section here, you need to work more here, or this limb's bending too much, so you need to leave that alone. If they can't see it, then trying to teach someone how to deal with that is very difficult. Hence why I've been reluctant in doing this video. I also think that, quite honestly, I'm not as good a video maker as a subject like this would require. I also feel that the time scale involved is just so vast. I mean, a bow can take days and days to tiller properly. To be able to show that process, I haven't got the time, the space or the equipment to be able to video it to effectively, so that it gives you, the viewer, the proper information that you need. But I'm going to give it a go anyway, and the video you're about to see will hopefully give you the basics, a pointer in the right direction of what tillering is about. The video is shot in stages, where you will see me return to the tiller with the bow on the tiller after having worked on the bow. You won't see me doing the work on the bow, because there's very little point. That's a whole video again on how to use tools and how to work the bow effectively. This is purely me doing the work on an area that I indicate. So say, oh, this bit's too stiff or whatever, I'll take the bow down, work on that area and put the bow back up, have a draw of the bow on the tiller and see where we are. and hopefully in that video you can at least see the process of the bow going from a roughed out stave with no bend in it at all to it being fully braced up as you see here. Hopefully it'll make sense. I'm going to do a voiceover over the top of the video and hopefully it'll work. And yes, I am perfectly aware it looks like I've got a bow sticking out of my head. Having finished roughing out the bow, I've now put it on the tiller for the first time, doing a few tentative draws to see what we've got. The bow is unstrung, hence the string being loose. There is still some initial setback in the limbs from it having been on a former. I can see at this early stage the bottom limb is significantly stiffer than the top, so that's what I'll work on now. Okay, so the bow's back on the tiller, and this is me explaining I used a plane to reduce the bottom limb throughout its length, and a small section near the handle of the top limb where I just used a rasp. I noticed it was a bit stiff, but I'm still concentrating on that bottom limb. You can use calipers or a ruler, and you can see whether a limb is actually physically larger than another. And in this case, the bottom limb is slightly chunkier than the top limb, so I'm reducing that. As you can see, I'm jumped in the middle here. I don't normally work at the angle that you're seeing this at. It's just for your benefit. So still a bit more to come off that bottom limb. Okay, so this is the third time on the tiller, and here I am pointing out that I've used the plane again to remove wood generally from that stiff bottom limb. And now I've done a bit of work on the bow, I'm going to do a lot more drawing, a lot more pulling of the bow on the tiller, and increase the draw length that I'm pulling it. You can see the marks on the tiller there, the inches on there. I'm starting to see a lot more detail now. Here I'm jumping back in the middle again. The bottom limb is still stiff, but we're starting to see a bit more movement as I'm drawing the bow further. And I'm noticing the top limb has got an area approximately in the middle of the top limb that's bending slightly. So I'm going to want to remove a little bit on the tip of that limb, and probably at the handle sections. The handle sections generally on the bow now are looking quite stiff, so that's where I'm going to work on next and see what we get. Okay, so it's the fourth time of the bow being on the tiller. As you can see, I've removed wood either side of the handle section there with the rasp, and a little bit at the tip of the top limb to try and relieve the excessive bend that I've noticed in the centre section of the top limb. I'm not showing the tillering process or me drawing the bow on the tiller in real time. I'm actually now drawing the bow an awful lot more to try and get that work that I've done on the bow in between it being on the tiller bedded in. You've got to draw the bow to get it to work in. I'm showing you again, it's still stiff at the handles and I've now noticed stiff at the top and the bottom limb. So I'm going to work on either side of the handle section and the tips. Okay, the bow's back on the tiller. I've removed the wood either side of the handle and at the tips with the rasp. Now, because I'm starting to draw the bow much more and I'm starting to get a decent bend in the bow, approaching, say, bracing height or thereabouts, I've actually removed the tool marks throughout the bow with a scraper. Now, when you're making a bow at first, the first stages of tillering, you don't need to particularly worry too much about how many tool marks you've got in it. But now I'm getting to the point where I'm approaching bracing height. I don't want to leave that for later on where I've nearly finished the bow, then remove tool marks and find I've altered my tiller. So I'm being much more careful from now on. Here I'm explaining that I'm at the point where I'm happy to brace the bow up. So I'm going to take the bow down from the tiller and brace the bow up. I'm not going to go for full bracing height. I'm measuring here about 3 or 4 inches. So I'm going to
braced the bow up to around the sort of 4-inch mark, so just over halfway braced. And putting the bowyers knot into the tillering grooves, as we call them, which are basically temporary grooves in the bottom and top of the bow. If you are working on the tip section, which I have been, you may need to redo those grooves because you don't want the string slipping out. Now the bow's braced up, I'm able to see if there's any twist, any sideways bend in the bow by eyeing down the length of the bow. Again, this is one of those things that's going to be difficult to show on camera, but I'm going to give it a go. Now I do notice that there is a twist in the bow. I don't know whether you can see that there. The bow is actually going to my left or your right as you look at the screen. It's quite a general twist down the length of the bow, so I'm going to mark the side of the bow that's bowing out, because that's where I'm going to want to take wood away to make that side weaker and draw the bow back to a nice straight length. I'm also finding if there's any individual point where it's worse, which is just there, which is marking there, so I can unbrace the bow and work on that side where it's bowing out to one side, and then we'll get it back on the tiller and see if that makes a difference. Now I've done the work on the bow to try and get rid of that twist, having removed out wood on one side of the bow throughout the entire length, and a little bit concentrating on an area that was slightly more acutely twisted than the rest of the bow. So I'm going to do quite a bit of drawing of the bow to get that work to bed in, to see if we can get the bow to come good. As the bow is braced up a lot more now, nowhere near full bracing height, but about 4 inches or so, we can start to see the bend of the bow a lot easier. This is where tillering gets a little bit easier to see. The bottom limb here is still quite stiff, is what I'm noticing, and also the top limb, the exaggerated bend mid limb of the top limb. Again, is easier to see because I've braced the bow up. So don't be frightened to get the bow up to a partial bracing height. You'll probably find things are easier to see. So I'm going to take out wood throughout the length of the bottom limb and try and ease that the area of bend at the top. I'm also going to take a little bit out of the handle and tip section of the top limb, to say avoiding that the slightly bending area, and we'll see if we can't ease that off a bit. Okay, we're back on the tiller after having done the work on the bottom limb with the plane, and I then used a rasp on the top of the sort of handle section of the top limb and the tip of the top limb. Again, trying to ease off this area of excessive bend. I'm not sure whether you can see that. It's probably more visible when I draw the bow. I am drawing the bow a little further now, probably around about 22-23 inches on the tiller, though we aren't up to full bracing height, so it's probably equivalent of, say, 20 inches if the bow was fully braced. I'm nearly at the point where I am going to fully brace the bow. In fact, I could do now, which I will be in the next section. Again, the bottom limb's still a little bit stiff, so I'm going to take some more, again generally out the full length, and try and ease off that area of bend in the top limb. So I'll do that work, get it back on the tiller and get it up to full bracing height and see what we've got. Okay, I'm getting the bow up to full bracing height now. We're nearing the end of this stage of tillering. Getting the bow up to full bracing height really does exaggerate the bend of the limbs and obviously the twists. So any problems are probably going to show up a lot more, making it easier for us to see what's what. Once the bow is braced up and it is in your hand, you can turn the bow upside down in all different directions that you can't achieve on the tiller. And can sometimes enable you to see things that you perhaps didn't when it was flat on the tiller. There we are, up to full bracing height, which is about 6.5 inches approximately. One of the other things that I do in between each stage is measure the limbs. So I measure from the top of the handle, from the bottom of the handle up to midway up the limb, say about 7 inches or so, and then measure from the limb to the string to give me an idea on the distance of the bend in each limb. The top limb being longer than the bottom limb, we're looking for a slightly bendier top limb by about 2/8 of an inch or so. Also, as you can see here, or hopefully you can see, that twist has almost gone. The string is lying down the centre of the bow much better. There's still a bit of a twist there, but a lot of the final tillering will be done later on, hence saying this is the final stage of this type of tillering, because I will be putting the nocks on later. As you can see there, it's gone from about 4 inches to 6.5 inches. You can use the fist meal, which is sort of a rule of thumb, to get the measurement there. My hands are a bit small, so I've got to add on an inch or so if I use that method. Say about 6.5 inches bracing height now. The nocks will be going on later on, so the tips of the limbs are left relatively stiff, so they are deliberately stiff at the moment, because I will be tapering the ends of the limbs down to meet the hole in the nock. So they may appear a little stiff at the moment. That's leaving you room for manoeuvring later on. That bottom limb's bending a lot better now, and as I say, the measurements I just made there, it's showing me that everything's coming good. And like I mentioned before, I haven't been showing you this in real time. I'm probably drawing the bow after each stage of tillering, probably say 20 times at least, to get that work in. I'm just drawing the bow up to its full draw length there. It's been designed for a person with a 28-inch draw, so I'm drawing at 27, 28 now, and seeing whether I'm happy with the bend. As I say, that's pretty much it for this video and for this stage of tillering. I hope that's been of some use. As I say, it's been a bit of a daunting task to try and explain everything about tillering, but I hope this has given you an idea of the basic processes, and I hope that you can perhaps re-watch it and perhaps gain some confidence from it to give it a go. You can only really learn this art, the art of tillering, by doing it, by giving it a go and developing your style. You'll probably find your bows look completely different to mine and to everybody else's, and that shouldn't put you off. You really need to find your way of doing it. And as the final thing I'm doing here is weighing up the bow at 28 to see what it is. Again, I hope that's been useful. If you've got any questions, perhaps put them in the comments section below, and I will do my best to help you out. Okay, happy tillering and good luck.